Alright, so this is going to go over how to start printing with the little RP2 resin DPL printer. So when you get this printer, there's going to be a green box on the back of the printer. It's got a little raspberry on it. In the very top of that, there is a micro SD card. You'll want to take that out and plug it into your computer. This is how we set up the network. When you plug it in, you're going to get prompted with format the disk. We definitely do not want to format the disk. So we're going to cancel that, and it's going to come up with the file explorer that we can actually see. We can see some of these files in here, but we can't see all of them because some of them are made for the Raspberry system in order to work. The one that we are looking for is nanodlp-network. We want to open that up. Now in here we want to add, depending on our Wi-Fi settings, we want to add our network ID, this is where I put it, and your network password. So you would put that right there. When you're done, it's very important that you click and close this and save it. Once it is saved, you actually want to eject the SD card, not just pull it out. We don't want to corrupt this SD card, so as soon as we're done typing in our password and our network, close it out, eject the card, and put it into the Raspberry Pi that's on the back of the printer. Alright, so now we want to go, after you plug in the printer, you need to plug in the projector, which is the big cord, and then there is a power supply box which has a little round plug-in. There's a round plug-in to plug into the very back of the printer. Plug that in, it's just hanging on a wire. Plug that in, and once it is all set up and plugged in, ready to go, give it a few minutes for the Raspberry Pi to actually boot up. Then we'll want to go into our file explorer. This is how I do it. You can go to your networks, and then here it will pop up in one of these other devices at some point. Maybe not, but mine, it did pop up into the other device when I first started. I actually copied that shortcut and I moved it up here and I renamed it so that way I always know what that connection is. So when I open that up, it brings me right to the console of the nanodlp. The other way to get here is actually just open up your web browser, go to, I think it's nanodlp.com, and then right up here there's a cloud dashboard. If you click on here, it will come up with your list of printers. I have this printer named as Little RP, so just click on that and it will take you right to the same window. This only works if your network is set up, so follow the previous steps. If you've waited 4 or 5 minutes and you still can't log on, try taking out that SD card and making sure that the network settings are the correct network settings for your network. So from here, in this setup terminal, everything's already been set up and calibrated. Now in moving, you might find that maybe when you print a calibration cube and you measure it with your calipers, maybe your calibration cube is 20.05, or which is pretty good, or maybe you find that it's 20. Let's just say 21. Well, in these two numbers, the XY resolution and the Y resolution, that is actually how you fine-tune the adjustments. If you go down in numbers, it decreases the size, I believe, If you go up in numbers, it increases the size. And so it's something that you got to kind of play with. They work together, and they work in conjunction to the actual printer or to the projector on the printer. But as long as everything comes nice and smooth, you shouldn't really have to play with these numbers. But these are really the only numbers that you would have to play with in these settings. So everything else should be set up as far as firmware and everything goes, so that way 20 millimeters is 20 millimeters. So from there you don't really have to do anything. The projector calibration, you can display a full white projector on the print bed. Make sure you don't have any resin in there, otherwise it will cure the first layer. Same with the boundaries. You can display basically, if I were to display that, no. It basically just puts out a display of what your boundaries are. So that lets you know where you can and where you cannot print. You got red dynamic calibration. You know, I like to use the red one if I have resin in the tank. I don't like to display these layers for very long, just long enough to make sure that I'm printing within my area. Z-axis control, you really shouldn't need to come into here. Now you can move basically the head of the machine up and down here. You just want to be careful you don't ram it down into the bottom of the tank and just keep going. If you get close to the bottom of the tank, start using the 1 millimeter, half a millimeter, and 0.1 of a millimeter to move it down close to the tank. There's two ways you can start the print. I've always just used the manual way, where I just manually push the print head down when I'm ready to start the print. And you want to make sure it's down all the way flat on the bottom. I will look through the box, through the printing case basically, over the projector, and just make sure that I got a pretty silver plate over top of the print bed, and that I don't have, you know, maybe a little piece of print or something stuck underneath of the print head. I just want to make sure that I got it nice and all the way down. So I like to press it down. You can use these controls to actually move the print head up and down. Whatever you prefer is fine. In here we have my resin profiles. This is my standard profile. This is my current default. This is what I always go to and roll back to. This basically is just giving me really good prints based on, you know, what I've come across. There's a G plus file in here, so if you're using any of the G plus from Maker Juice, use this profile. It seems to be a little bit better. The G plus actually cures a little bit faster. So you can see I got 10 seconds per layer on the SF juice, and I got 6 seconds on the G plus juice. Also, you know, here's another G plus. Maybe this works for some of your prints, maybe it doesn't. Here is a bigger, thicker profile. So this is going to be 0.1 millimeters. This is 0.05. And here is one that is really fine detail, ultra, you know, ultra smooth. You won't really see any layer lines. And this is 0.02 of a millimeter files there. In here, this is where you get your, where you make your plates. So, like I told you on the phone, I like to use the mesh mixer to make my plates. You can add supports into this one, but it doesn't necessarily have an automated support. So let's just grab a file here. So if I were to go like this, it sets it up about that distance. Obviously this checkerboard is the print bed, and it needs to be all the way down there to the print bed. Well, with this one, you literally go into the support view, You pick whatever support that you want, you scroll around, and you just plop supports where you need them. So you can see the support that I grabbed has a big ball on the end. Very fine detail stuff. You want the one that has more of a point to it. This I find was very cumbersome and not the greatest at it. Plus you have to literally be able to pick everything out that's hanging in the air. You can, if you make a mistake, you can come over here, you can delete the supports that you had put. Oh, and I actually deleted the model as well. So I didn't really like this that much. Basically, you can download the STL that way. You can add it as a plate. Or how I like to do it is I open up Mesh Mixer. It says import something. Type arrow mount. So you can see in here that it's not very well centered, nothing's really good on there. So how I use this is I go to edit, align. That's going to bring it right to the dead center, flat on the build plate. And then from there, you have a couple of options. You can, let's see. Oh, I have, you go into these printers, printer preferences. You can come in here and you can add your own printer. On mine, I believe, thought I had put one in here, but I guess not. All visible. No, I don't have one. If you would want to add one, basically add one. So we have a width. I like to be on the little small side, so I do 36 millimeters. Depth, I'm going to do 56 millimeters. Oops. 56 millimeters. Height is about 100. You can go higher, but you'll have a hard time getting it out and stuff like that. So I'd recommend 100 unless you absolutely know what you're doing and you know what to do. I don't think you need to put any of this stuff in here. So we'll add that. Printer software name. Model. Alright, so there is that. Now I'm going to switch to that printer. So now I've switched to that printer. You can see that my build plate, this now gives me an idea of my build plate. And we know that this model is not going to print onto there. But fear not, we can still use it for testing. So after I have my printer selected, now I know where the center of my build platform is, and I can arrange all of my models that way. So as far as the support goes, go into this overhangs file. I like to use the Autodesk Embler, or you can use the SLA DPL printer or DLP printer. This is the one that I've always kind of just used, and it seems to do a pretty good job. There are a lot of options in here, especially in the support generator, where you can change things around. The factory settings seem to be good unless you're having a really hard time with stuff. Then you can change the tip height, the base dimension if the base isn't, working out very well. Density. There's a lot of settings in here. Definitely get in there and play around with them, so that way you know what you're doing. Hit the generate support. it takes a little bit of time. But now, if we go down here, we can see support to support those holes right there. And it lifts my whole model up. And it puts, basically they call this a bed of nails. And it's only going to do it where it's on the build plate. So you want to make sure you size accordingly. But you can see there's a bunch of little points, and that's going to allow for it to basically add the supports. So if we, now you can actually add your own supports as well. So like up here, it did not add any supports, which adding your own supports is kind of hard. Really right here, you don't need any supports, to be honest with you. Just the way that resin printers work, there's enough surface area here to support the next very thin layer here as it builds up. Let's try a different model. Done. Let's import, replace. Let me try something that actually might look like it needs supports. Let's do this one. Once again, it doesn't fit on my build plate. Oops. But we can still work with it. We want to transform it. We want to put it into the middle of the build plate. Local frame. No, not transform. Edit. Align. There we go. That brings us right to the very dead center. Accept. So there's that. Now if I come in here and we do the overhangs, and you'll want to play with the overhangs and just figure out what works and what doesn't work. Every model's different, but it cannot print in midair. So here you can see that there's a lot of support everywhere. That's outside the build bed, so it didn't get any support. But inside, it actually doesn't fill the whole model with support. This is a pretty good model to kind of look at because it does a lot. But you can see that it actually adds support for this whole top structure here. That ear on there is actually on the outside of it, but there you can see the support on the inside ear. So from there we want to go done, and basically we export this as an STL. On this top, I'm just going to do testing. Then we come back to, alright, so now that we're back into the nanodlp, I just went straight to the main page here. We're going to go to plates, add, select our file, and we were in wherever you put your files at. Mine, I believe I did the desktop, and I named it testing. Then we're going to submit. Takes a little bit because it's actually starting to slice the model. Alright, so now you can see here that it's processing. You can resume printing, which we haven't started printing, so there's nothing to resume. You can print the file from the start, which is generally what I do. In here, you can go to layers. So that's going to show you all of the layers. You can either scroll through them. We don't have this many. It's building the layers as we speak. whereas I speak. And so I'm going to just scroll through, and you can see, so from there, that's the base, and then it goes into just the little points, goes all the way up. Then here it's getting down to just the needles, and you can see over here it didn't add all the necessary supports for those parts of it. And you start building the model. If you go too fast, you run into screens that haven't been made. So it literally is making a picture every layer, so every 0.05 of a millimeter on this particular slicing profile. And so it does take a while for it to actually completely process through. One thing that you'll notice is it cuts it off down here. So if you're over the print boundaries, it's literally going to cut it off flat, straight. It won't print it. Can come in useful if you're aligning models in a certain way, so that way it prints, and you can cut a piece off if you want, or if you want it up against the wall, you can literally align your model so that way the back is where you want it and cut it that way. Let's go back to your plates. So from here we can actually go in here, and this is the same screen as when you add the plate. And here is where you select basically what juice you're using, what resolution you want, and how fast and how slow you want it to print. Go back into the plates. When it's done actually creating the plate, so it's slicing, it's doing the slicing software basically. When it's done, it will tell you how much milliliters that you have used. And when you go into your resin profiles, if you edit it, I have the resin cost really high, and that's, basically not what it costs to get the resin, but that's what I figured it's going to run, with the power and everything per milliliter in order to basically print models. So the price comes up and it lets me know this is about how much it's going to cost to print the model. Not an exact figure, probably, I like to err on the margin of a little bit higher, but it's a useful tool for you as far as, what you can quote off of for your clients. You can show them, hey, this is going to cost $25 to print. So you can delete the models, do pretty much everything. There's no, settings as far as what happens. Resin profiles you can go through. You can, I like to basically, if I'm going to play with the resin profile, I'll clone this one. I'll name it something test, and then I'll come down here and I'll play with my settings as much as I need to. This G code right here is at the end of the print, so that way it actually raises the print out of the juice, so that way the juice can run off, especially if I'm gone at work or something and finish the print. I don't want it to just sit in the juice. I want it to pull out. It will drain and drip and drop, and then by the time I come home, I can wash it in alcohol, acetone, mineral spirits. There's lots of things to wash your prints on, and then cure them in a UV ray, and I'll provide one of those for you as well. Other than that, that's pretty much the software. Like I said, with the printer, there's a remote control for the projector. Basically, just press the power on, plug in both of the round plug-ins, and then the print plug. Plug both of those into the wall through the power supply or the actual plug itself. And then, like I said, however you want to actually move the print head, you can go down 100 millimeters, you can go up 100 millimeters. Some people will use this until the print, until the faceplate actually touches the bottom, you'll actually hear a little grindy noise or something. It's not going to force its way through or break anything really, but I didn't really like that. I would actually always just, push the print head all the way down and then turn the lead screw a few clicks until I know it's actually set. I actually like to go up and down with the lead screw just a little bit, so that way the resin will settle down underneath it there, especially if I had just shaken it in the bottle. There's a lot of air bubbles and stuff in there, and so I found if I go up and down with the print head, basically it causes those air bubbles to disperse. If you have any questions, just let me know. There is some sandpaper in with the kit. I have found every once in a while you have to basically rough up the bottom of the print, the aluminum block, the print bed, and that just allows for better adhesion. Other than that, there's some changing films. And you can look on YouTube for videos on how to change that stuff. There's some films and some gaskets. I got a couple of extra vats that I made, and other than that, you should be set to go. If you have questions, just let me know.